When a log is freshly cut, the fibres contain a great deal of water, both in the cell cavities and the cell walls. Since the moisture in the cavities is free to evaporate, it's termed free water. As the wood dries, the moisture continues to evaporate until the cavity nearly dries out, after which the bound water contained in the cell walls begins to evaporate. This point is called fibre saturation point, because the fibres are still saturated, even though the cell cavities are now almost dry. On average, this occurs in most species at around 30% MC. Until fibre saturation point is reached, the biggest change in the timber is that it gets progressively lighter as the free moisture is lost. After fibre saturation point, however, the cell walls begin to shrink and get stiffer. This is the process of seasoning. Wood is hygroscopic by nature. In other words, it absorbs and releases moisture according to the environment. Eventually, all timber exposed to the atmosphere will reach equilibrium moisture content. That is, a moisture content in balance with the surrounding air. So you can never air dry a piece of wood to 0 MC because the air itself always contains some moisture. EMC in most indoor coastal situations is between 10% and 15%. Once timber is seasoned, its MC will only change as the humidity or moisture content of the air changes. The two main methods used to season timber are air drying and kiln drying. Timber being air dried needs to be clear of the ground with individual pieces separated by strips and spaced apart so that the air can pass over all surfaces. Hardwoods typically take a year or more per inch of thickness to reach EMC. That is, a 2-inch thick board would take at least 2 years to dry to a seasoned state. Kilns have mechanical ventilation systems and heat and humidity controls to allow much faster drying under controlled conditions. For slow-drying hardwoods, it's often more economical to air dry them to fibre saturation point and then kiln dry them to EMC. However, the higher temperatures in kilns do tend to create drying stresses, so it's common at the end of drying to give the timber stack a high humidity treatment to relieve any internal stresses. Some hardwoods are also pre-steamed before the drying process begins to reduce the problem of collapse, where the cell walls buckle under the stress of drying. For plantation softwoods, such as radiata pine, high-temperature kilns are generally used, enabling the boards to be dried at up to 160 degrees Celsius. This allows small sections to be processed in a matter of hours. The high temperatures also soften the wood constituents, particularly the lignin that bonds the fibres together, helping to overcome the problems of twist, spring, and bow during the drying process. Here is a brief summary of the most significant points in the drying process. At moisture content levels of above 30%, timber is still green and still losing free water from the cell cavities. At about 30% for most species, fibre saturation point is reached, where evaporation begins to occur in the bound water contained in the cells. This is the point at which boards start to shrink. At about 20%, most forms of fungal decay are no longer able to survive, which means that the board is now resistant to fungal attack. 15% marks the top end of the equilibrium moisture content range, where the timber's moisture content has reached an equilibrium with the surrounding atmosphere. 10% is the bottom end of the standard EMC range. 0% is the moisture content of oven-dried timber. Bear in mind, of course, that the moment you take the timber out of the drying oven, its MC will start to climb back up to the EMC of that local environment. Flooring products and high-grade joinery items installed in climate-controlled buildings may need to be dried down to a lower level, typically 7 to 8%. This is because air conditioning systems have the effect of dehumidifying the air, especially in buildings with sealed windows. The Australian standard that covers milled hardwood products, such as strip flooring, states that seasoned hardwood must have an MC range of 9 to 14%, unless otherwise specified. Even then, it's still standard practice for flooring installers to acclimatise timber flooring in the room it will be installed in for up to 2 weeks before the material is fixed in position. This enables it to reach equilibrium with the local atmospheric conditions, which might be drier or wetter than the normal MC range.